I'm going to change up your question a little bit after our 3:45 a.m. production meeting. You said, "Is this the last season of college football as we know it?" I think that's an easy question. Yes. You have a 12-team playoff, an 18 Big Ten. You have no Pac-12, 16-team SEC. I'm just going to ask you, is it better? Will it be better in 2024 moving forward than it has been?
No. Now it may be better in
Climate, Caleb.
Hold on, Dave. It may be better in 2030.
That's crazy.
It may be better in 2030, but it won't be better in 2024. And it's just too disjointed, too disorganized at this point. What will make it better will be finally when the SEC and the Big Ten get all the teams they want and they create their own conferences within conferences. So you kind of go back to conferences, but the SEC and the Big Ten are governing bodies with teeth that the NCAA never was. And I don't know if that happens in 2030, 2035, 2037, whenever. But no, next year it's not going to be better. Nationalizing college football is so short-sighted, and I keep insisting this. If you make it closer to the NFL model, well then Dave, I'll just watch the NFL. Why would most fans would just watch the NFL at that point? College football's selling point is that it's something uniquely different from the NFL. And so the more you make it like the NFL, the less you make it uniquely entertaining. And I'm telling you, that's going to happen. The reason college basketball is selling, you don't see college basketball do the NBA playoffs, do you? Imagine if March Madness was like, let's do the NBA playoff model where we have a best of 5, a best of 7, a best of 7. People would be like, that's terrible. That's awful. And what makes March Madness unique is the whole upset city, whatever. And also, by the way, it's also what makes the rest of the college basketball season complete trash because nobody cares for the 3 months that the regular season is going on.
Okay, but let me stop you there for a second. That's not going to be the case with the 12-team playoff because buys and home games are in the bidding. So nobody's going to say, "Oh, just play Vanderbilt, rest your starters." That's never going to happen in college football. And I believe that people that are football fans through and through, that don't just show up because it's a cool tailgate at Neyland or Nissan Stadium, are going to be football fans of both. When they were both very good in the early 2000s, there were hundreds, because I used to cover Titans games. There were hundreds of cars I would see going back and forth to Nashville, to Knoxville, both ways to
They
see
cared
both
way more
teams.
about one than the other, though, Dave, and you know it.
No, well, and I think that's going to be UT. I think it's always going to be UT, and it's never going to change because of tradition. Nashville is a very transient town, kind of like Atlanta is now. Their fan base is fickle. Yes, they want to see the Titans do well, but they might be Bears fans because they moved in from Chicago. But I can tell you, talking to programming guys in that area, when Tennessee won and took over, it completely changed the way they programmed their station, and they had record numbers. They went from covering Tennessee 20% of the time to more like 50 or 60% of the time. So not worried about that whatsoever. The the only thing they could have done that would have screwed everything up is not found a way to make the regular season important all the way through. They found a way to do that. We are constantly, you and I specifically, but media criticize a lot, do we not?
Mm-hmm.
I think the 12-team playoff is masterful with the buys and the home games. I think it keeps you playing hard until the end of the year. So I think what they did is great. I think it's going to be phenomenal. I think being able to lose a game and still early in the season and still being talked about being part of a 12-team playoff is going to create even more chatter than back in the days where if Tennessee or Florida lost, they were pretty much out of the running for the SEC East, the SEC, and the national championship. I think it's going to change things tremendously. I think you'll see better football being played because of that, of guys knowing that they can still get in the playoff and they're not just playing for a meaningless bowl game. Let's face it, South Carolina was the exception to the rule last year, weren't they? I mean, they were pretty much in the tank, and what did they do? They beat two very good teams, two top 10 teams in Tennessee and Clemson. But how often does that happen? I mean, that's an aberration. Teams throw in the towel when they know they're going to a bowl game. I love everything about it. I think it's going to make it better. I've long been a proponent of this, and I'm incredibly excited. So, coming from one, and I hear you out there, Rocky Top Tom, the regular season does matter. Playoffs will not kill the regular season importance. I think what they have done is absolutely made the sport better. And I cannot wait for the excitement next year when we're talking about what 12 teams should make the playoff. The only hole in their whole argument is that you're going to have a lot of 12 versus 5s and 11s versus 6s because the first 4 teams get a bye. The way they're seeded, you're going to have a lot of blowouts. Just like you do now. Let's say LSU was the 5th team that got in. So look up for me on AP who was the top 12 team to finish the year. You don't even have to go regular season. I think it'll prove my point. But so you're going to have a very, very good team at 5, and there's going to be a significant drop off to 12. There will be some upsets. We saw that with Cincinnati. Cincinnati can get in there and do some stuff, but it's not going to be consistent. So who was 12 last year to end the entire season?
Oh, to end, I looked up to end the regular season, but 12 to end the regular season was Washington at 10-2.
Well, it was 5.
Alabama at 10-2.
Okay. Alabama's going to destroy Washington. It's going to be in Tuscaloosa. Washington's going to go home neutered. The Huskies will be neutered, and that's the end of that. So those are going to happen for a while. But what if those teams start getting better and you have more very good teams instead of just 1 or 2 great teams?
But look, if it was 12 and you had 128 teams in college football all competing for 12, I could listen a little more. But it's going to render it irrelevant because we know, as it should be, all the wild card spots are going to be reserved for the SEC and the Big Ten. So there's going to be less pressure. There's never going to be, I'm sorry, the greatest moment in college football history to me, and Dave, you can disagree with me. I think the greatest moment in the history of the sport was the 2013 Iron Bowl, Alabama-Auburn, the Auburn kick 6. That there was not a moment in the history of the sport that tops that moment. You watch that kick 6, and Vern Lundquist, to his credit, was interviewed about it. He said, we didn't even comment for 2 minutes after the game. We just let the spectacle of the sport take care of itself because it was the greatest spectacle anybody ever saw, and it encapsulated the greatest of college football of what we loved. That kick 6 is totally irrelevant.
Tom, I love you, brother, but teams aren't going to try to lose the last game of the regular season to avoid a conference championship game. That still means a lot. There's still a lot on the line. Nobody, and you can't in the game of football, you can't say let's drop it down a notch. All you can do is pull your starters, which they do in the NFL on occasion, but I don't think that's going to be the case in college football. I think college football is about to explode at a whole other level.
Look, there's a way to do a 12-team playoff, by the way, Dave, the way you're talking, and make it good. You know how you make it good? You have 8 16-team conferences, and all 8 conference champs get an automatic bid, and then 4 wild cards. Then every game still matters, and there's stuff to play for at the end of the year. But the way they're doing it right now, one, it's not going to be the top 6 conference champions. It's probably going to end up being the top 2 conference champions because it's going to be just the SEC and the Big Ten. So then it renders every Saturday even less relevant because at least if you're playing for a conference title, well, even now, one loss can knock you out of your conference championship race. And so I'm just saying that, look, minor league baseball, I'll just give you an example. Minor league baseball is completely irrelevant as a sport now. Wasn't 70 years ago, but national television made it an irrelevant sport. Why? Because minor league baseball has the same format as Major League Baseball. And people were like, well, why don't I just watch Major League Baseball then?
Well, now, I think we're talking about 2 different things. I mean, I understand that the elite athletes are going to be at the NFL level, but there's still enough nostalgia and enough kinsmanship to your team that's going to carry over that. And I don't believe
for us. What about people that are born after this, though? For us, yes, but what 50 years down the road when we're all dead and gone, or hopefully 70 years, whatever, what's it going to be then? The kids that are born today are not going to develop the same affinity for college football that we developed.
By the way, Bob Barker dying at 99 years old. Almost made it. That was a shame.
Almost went over $1. Just hit right under just hit right under the dollar.
Yeah, and it was, somebody actually picked that he would be 96 years old. And then the next person said, I'll go 97. You know how they go one up.
Oh, yeah.
And so
nice.
He did get me through a lot of sick days. So I hate that Bob Barker passed away. And he was so good in Happy Gilmore. And
why don't you shut the hell up?
And he was.
By the way, the whole appeal of Happy Gilmore, the golfer, if that was a real movie, the appeal would have died the minute he got beat up by Bob Barker. Because the whole thing was he's this blue-collar, rough and tough hockey player in golf. The minute you get beat up by Bob Barker, you don't have that appeal anymore.
Bob Barker was a Gold Gloves champion in the military.
Oh, I know that, but Happy Gilmore's whole appeal was that he was a fighter. I mean, he killed an alligator in the movie.
Yeah, but it was a pretty good story. I mean, that's a pretty good bit. You gotta give him that.